Are they just not good enough businesses?
Our businesses that we have are wonderful franchises. They're excellent, but we basically are looking at our strategy based on 4 principles. We want to be very much thoughtful in our responses. We want to make sure that our strategy, that we come out focused, that we're connected, that we're very clear around making the bank simpler, and that we take a very candid view on the strategy. So as we look at the businesses over a decade ahead, we want to be a winner. We want to close the return gap with our peers. And to do that, you take a candid assessment of which of the businesses that you are going to be in a position to succeed and win in, and which are ones that are perhaps in that better hands with another bank.
And I guess what you announced last week, it's not just divestment. That sort of felt like the headline, but it's also significant investment, in particular in wealth, and also, I guess, giving you more space to focus on the institutional business in Asia as well.
Yes, we're focused on what we want to be, not what we don't want to be. And we have a number of fantastic franchises. Our institutional franchise around the world is somewhat iconic through history, and we want to make sure in the decade ahead it remains in that position. Similarly, we think we've got a tremendous opportunity to win in wealth, particularly in Asia, with strong opportunities in the US. And so we're doubling down in the areas that we want to focus on, where we see the stronger growth and return opportunities for us.
And then just a final question on this strategic refresh. You used the phrase last week of a fundamental transition. Are we to expect similar size strategic shifts in other areas of your business, and how soon might we see those?
Well, we're doing work on the strategy refresh, as you said, at the moment. That's ongoing. We're looking at what are the strategies for our different businesses, and how do we make sure that they're well connected, that they're in leading positions, and set up to succeed in the decade ahead. So I think more to come for sure, but we'll see where the work takes us, Wilf.
Jane, just wanted to talk about the broader environment. You said this is the healthiest you've seen the consumer emerge from a crisis in a very long time. If you could just expand on that, and globally, you guys have such a global reach and a unique perspective. It's been so uneven with the recovery, with the vaccination rates, with the lockdowns and COVID cases. What do you project for the rest of the year and into next?
I think it's a very different picture in different parts of the world. So if we go for a brief trot around the world, in the US for sure, there's a huge stock of unspent savings, and our consumers are the healthiest we've seen in a long time in terms of their balances and their savings. When we look at the corporates, the same is true. They've got a lot of cash balances to put to work. And so I think what we're looking at in the US is a strong recovery, and we want to see that liquidity that is being created put to work into the real economy, driving investments so this is sustainable. I think fairly similar picture in Asia. China will obviously be a big driver of growth going forward there, but let's not forget the Indo-Pacific region as well, which has got a lot of growth potential and ammunition behind it. We think Europe's probably going to be a bit slower, partly because of the vaccine. And there's a few more concerns around commercial credit and the small and medium-sized enterprises there. And I think the biggest challenge will be the emerging markets, where large levels of government debt, slower response on vaccines will probably slow things down there.
And touch on a topic of culture on Wall Street, if I may. There's been so much discussion about this in recent weeks, both at Citi with you having Zoom-free Fridays, but also at other investment banks, and particularly the culture that junior bankers are having to deal with. If some of your 200,000 employees are watching this interview, how would you define for them what the culture at Citigroup will be under the leadership of Jane Fraser?
I think we've got many wonderful aspects to our culture, particularly our globality and the diversity and the mindset that has. And that would be something I would never want to lose in the organization. I'd say 3 things: excellence, accountability, and empathy. We certainly strive to be excellent in our client service, in our operations, in our risk and control, and in our people. accountability to deliver the results that everyone is expecting from a bank, not only the financial results, but also in our broader responsibilities in the economy and in society. And then I think empathy is a very, very important and undervalued quality. It's one about listening, it's one about incorporating other people's points of views, and making sure that you have a culture that is in tune with the society that you operate in. So I think that's part of what we already have in the bank, but it's going to be an important part that we continue going forward.
As you think about the road forward, Jane, is remote work good or bad? We've seen so much press lately about the junior bankers at Goldman Sachs getting frustrated and burned out. And you have seen it across Wall Street and different banks taking different measures to address it, some of them giving them bonuses. What are you feeling inside of Citigroup? And you think people should be working remotely come fall?
Yes, so when we look in terms of the lifestyle that everyone has, I think mental well-being has been something that we've all realized that we have to pay attention to. And the relentlessness of the workday under the pandemic, and so much time in front of the camera, which you can relate to, and so much time just being in back-to-back meetings without the ability to get around. It's taken a toll on everybody. So as we're looking about going back to the office in the future, what we're looking at doing is having an environment where we do believe people are better together. There's apprenticeship, there's collaboration, there's productivity that's helped, but we've certainly learned very clearly that flexibility and the ability to work from home has been something we've proven that we can do extremely well. And so we'll be looking at a hybrid model when we come back, so we can afford people a bit more flexibility. If you're an analyst who's working hard during the day, you can have dinner and you'll be trusted that when you go home, that if you need to do some more work, you can, but you can take a break. And I think that flexibility is going to be important, both for, frankly, competitiveness in the talent market, but most importantly for having a healthy population and a healthy team of people in the bank. And it's a high priority for me.
Jane, when we consider the consent order, a lot of people are sort of reminded of Wells Fargo a few years back, where the initial thought of the punishment might be that it was a matter of months, perhaps a year. How are you thinking about the timeline here? Are you confident that it won't be as it was for them 3-4 years until you get it lifted?
Well, I would never comment on another bank. What I would say here is we didn't have situation of major customer harm or fraud. We have an operation and we have a risk and control environment and an infrastructure that we need to invest more in. So as we look at it, I look at it as not just addressing the consent order, but actually a much more fundamental transformation of our infrastructure. We're in an incredibly fast-moving digital world. It's evolving so quickly, as we've seen over the last year. It's imperative that we have an infrastructure, that we have operational excellence, and that we have a risk and control environment that is able to perform with excellence, with the scale, the speed, and the volumes that we expect in a digital world. And so I think, like many institutions, we are viewing what we have to do as a major transformation, and obviously addressing the consent order is a high priority within that. But this is a multi-year transformation that most organizations around the world are having to look at.
Yeah, on the digital transformation, what do you do about the competitive threat from fintech and big tech in general? Google, even Walmart getting into financial services. How big of a threat do you see that, and what do you do about it?
Well, I think we've got to take a step back and recognize what is happening to the world of the global world of finance. And we're moving from what's been an architecture of finance, from currencies all the way to deposits, that served us for many decades around the world, to a completely different architecture now, which is digitally based and in some instances digitally born. And we've all got to make that transition. It happened in equities probably back in the 80s, but it's happening in many, many more parts of the institution. So frankly, it's a case of we all have an imperative to move on to many more digital architectures in many more parts of our business. And if we don't, the threat of the fintechs and the large techs will be a very real one. And in many instances, they are partners and collaborators with us, as well as clients, as well as competitors. And we will participate with them appropriately on all three dimensions.
Jane, on capital markets, all through last year, we kept sort of saying each quarter, well, this can't keep going this strongly. And then first quarter of this year was even better than the last few of last year. I mean, how's it looking this quarter? And do you think, in fact, this bull market for capital markets can continue a bit longer than we all expected?
Look, I think we've, and our CFO, Mark Mason's talked about this quite often, that this year we expect to see increasing normalization in the capital markets. When I take a step back, I think we've got some tailwinds and we've got some headwinds in the financial markets. We've certainly got the tailwinds behind us of the large amount of liquidity. We should have strong economic outlook, as we talked about before. We hope to see continued investment and innovation that will be driving the economies and the markets forward. On the other hand, there are some losses from the crisis itself. We've seen this in loan growth, and it's going to take some time for that momentum in a number of parts of the business to be regained. Rates have also been pretty low, so I think you've got quite a diverse picture going on there. And this year we'll probably see some more normalization across the board, and some of that will benefit parts of the business, and some of it will be a normalization in the other direction.
Jane, wanted to ask a question about the role of the CEO in general in 2021 and getting involved in issues. You signed your name along with a number of other corporate leaders pledging equal opportunity for voting rights. Obviously, this has been a hot button issue in Georgia. What do you say to people who think corporations should not get involved? You should not get involved in political issues and favoring certain legislation? On this frontier, despite the accent that I have and that I share with Wilf, I've been a proud American for 20 years. And I certainly view, and I think our whole company does view, that that for eligible voters and registered voters have the right to vote. We encourage our people in Citi to go out and vote in their countries around the world where they're registered to do so. And that's something that we stand by. It's no more and no less than that.
And Jane, to round things off, I wanted to reflect a little bit on the fact that you are the first female CEO of one of the big six Wall Street firms. And I just wondered how much you paused to reflect on that yourself. And if you ever think, gosh, well, I hope to inspire a generation of women to look at Wall Street and think that this is the place for me.
I certainly hope to inspire a generation of women and men to look at Wall Street and say it's the place for them. I think we're seeing some shifts in leadership. I think there are plenty of opportunities for people of many different styles to succeed in Wall Street. But my main focus right now is I want to do a good job in the day job and inspire people by delivering.
And no dilly-dallying. Jane, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.